You have to be really intentional about putting a team together.
I was in!
Crawled out of the pile and just started screaming.
How good is Joey Bosa?
Herbert, rolling, looking, throwing, end zone, touchdown!
It's intercepted. Derwin James. Derwin was there.
You got to be on a mission every day in the NFL. But even more than that, you got to be on a mission together.
Welcome to another episode of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. Today's show is being, of course, brought to you by Manscaped. Dan, gotta love Manscaped.
Yes, I have a shirt on. We save balls. Go to manscaped.com. Use the code LAFB20. That's a new code, LAFB20. Get 20% off and free shipping. Get the Lawnmower 2.0. You've heard the spiel. But yes, LAFB20. Use the code at checkout. 20% off and free shipping. Jake, how are you doing today? I feel like we have had quite the last, I don't know, weeks, months. But today especially has been just, whew, jeez.
You had a day. You had a day. I'm doing just fine. I have had a hell of a couple of weeks. I'm ready for a vacation, and I'm getting one this weekend that I am extremely excited about. So I'm in good spirits. But yes, this feels weird because you and I have not talked with one another since, God, it's been what, at least 3 weeks?
Since we've had like a normal,
you and me? Yeah,
just a normal episode, just you and me. It's been a while.
Everybody tuning in right now is immediately disappointed because we've had so many damn guests on over the past couple of weeks. And they're like, oh no, we got to just listen to these two guys for the next half hour.
These stupid faces for 30 minutes.
Oh man. Anyways, I know you had a day, Dan, but overall, how are you?
Overall, I'm good. Yes, I had a day. Long story short, for those who are watching and listening, I guess, I'm going to give like the quick 30-second elevator pitch of my day. I leave the gym. I get a call from my wife. There are 2 German shepherds outside of our house. We don't know whose they are. Our cat was out front. Our cat then escaped to the backyard. Cat is safe. I then pull up, wondering why there are 2 German shepherds. I then have to leave for an appointment. I go into the garage to park. I don't park all the way into the garage, and the garage door slams on my car. I then hurry up, go in, grab a protein shake, leave to go to my teeth appointment. I made it there within 1 minute of the grace period. And then apparently the dogs stayed and tormented the cats for a good half an hour through the door. The cats were hissing and all kinds of stuff. And one of the dogs turns out name is Maverick. And the owner comes in, apparently had just like put her baby down and the dogs got out. And she was like frantically trying to find her dogs. And my wife almost had a heart attack, the whole nine. So I've had stuck in traffic. It was brutal. So
it was an eventful day for you.
Yeah. Did I do that in 30 seconds? That was longer, huh?
Not going to lie. When you told me that there was 2 German shepherds, I thought you were about to tell me like the cops went to the wrong house or something like that. Like the dogs were out sniffing for drugs. And
probably.
They just went to the wrong house.
Nope. They were sniffing for my 2 cats, apparently.
Anyway.
So that was my day. So let's talk about something more fun, less stressful, less anxiety-inducing. Let's talk about football. And Jake, this is probably when we start getting into some of the more fun, nitty-gritty conversations about actual football players. Mm-hmm. And we get to get into position battles. And this is like one of your favorite parts of the season.
I love this just because it's again, this is the purgatory time of the off season, and as of today, we have 29 days until training camp officially opens for the Chargers, July 27th, and we're just sitting and waiting because we've had mini camp, we've had OTAs. Majority of the team obviously showed up for it. I think everybody showed up for it, if I remember correctly, and there's already been so much hype from it. We're still coming off the heels of the draft and everything that brought along with us. We've gone through the free agency period. Now we get to actually see these guys go out there and perform. We've talked about ad nauseum Derwin James being back. I mean, the hype, Justin Herbert, everything. And especially after the Super Bowl. Yeah, oh yeah. Especially after having Fernando Ramirez on last weekend. That's what I think really got me going. Again, just listening to Fernando's knowledge, just I've never wanted to hear someone elaborate more than I want to hear Fernando, because his answers are going to be lengthy, but they're lengthy in the best possible way, because it's just a slew of fun stories and knowledge. And that was what really geared me up for this conversation that we're having this week. And I'm particularly excited today because, as you said, Dan, we're now doing position group breakdowns, talking about camp battles coming up in the next couple of weeks. And I didn't want to start with some of the obvious ones, because even Fernando was saying last week, it's like, well, the obvious as far as like the big camp battles to watch would be wide receiver. But there was another position that he talked about, and I mentioned this position just prior to the draft. I mentioned it prior to free agency. There is still one position on this roster. I know a lot of people would go and they would say the safety position, as far as there's still a lot of depth that can be filled at that spot. For me, it's interior defensive line, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. There is a lot of question marks, actually, to me, when I look beyond the starters that we have in this team. Who is the depth? Who is going to be that person to step up? And you may actually have a little bit of competition behind some of these guys. So it's going to be interesting, especially in Brandon Staley and Renaldo Hill's new defense. Who's going to win out? I'm interested to get into some of these guys.
It is, I think what's going to be more important too, as we go through this, I shouldn't say more important, but equally as important as you kind of take a step back, is looking at how important the interior defensive line is to a Brandon Staley-led defense. Like, you look at his past time. I mean, you had arguably the best player in football, Aaron Donald, shoring up the interior for the Rams. You had Leonard Floyd, right? I've been getting so many names mixed up. Shoring up the interior. I mean, he was doing great. Kind of an interior, exterior tweener sort of thing. Interior is very important, especially if we're switching to 3-4. So how it's going to be deployed, I think, is going to be kind of shaping this conversation with which ones make the depth chart, why they're going to be important, because it's a unique defensive front that we're having to fit for a Staley-led defense.
Yeah, definitely. And the interesting thing about this is that for certain players that we're still kind of waiting to take that next step, or, we've been waiting a couple of years for this new scheme change, and especially with this new coaching staff, it may end up turning out to their benefit. So it's going to be a completely new look defense. And I could be sitting here today and saying that I'm very scared about the depth, but who knows? You really don't know. If we're still talking about a Gus Bradley scheme here, I'd probably be walking on eggshells for this position all the way up until week one. But the truth is, as we said last week, we really don't know what to expect because of the new coaching staff that's come in. But let's start this off. Let's kick it off. We're going to go through the obvious starters of it, and switching to a 3-4. You got to start with the big man in the middle, Linval Joseph. Probably one of the more underrated defensive linemen that played last year as far as production goes. And I'll even say underrated from my standpoint, because even I didn't give him probably the respect that he deserved. It's nothing that jumps out to you, but did you know that Linval Joseph played 725 snaps last year, which I think was actually 9 short, if I remember reading it correctly, 9 short of his career, that like best in his career that he's done on an annual basis. Wow. But still, even in that, 62 tackles, 14 quarterback pressures, 3 tackles for a loss, and 2 quarterback hits. Now, it may not seem like a lot because, again, we have to think it's a completely different defense, and the Chargers never blitzed, and they were weak against the run, and whatever you want to say. But still, for a guy at that position, that's still good production that you'd want to see. Could you have seen more? Absolutely. But for an anchor for a defensive line for this team that had so many moving parts throughout it, and just needing that one person to step up and stay consistent, Linval Joseph was on that short list.
And you heard Fernando talk about it on our last episode, where he said, like, he did a lot of the dirty work that you don't necessarily see in the stat sheet, where he'll be the one kind of coming in behind the scenes, shoring up tackles, he'll be the one kind of cleaning up behind the line of scrimmage. Like, you saw a lot of effort, a lot of motor from a Linval Joseph, and it's really good and important to see that from the interior. Like you see a lot of that happen with outside linebackers, defensive ends, safeties, all kind of stuff. But when you have a defensive lineman who is that big, who is still kind of coming at it from the backside, it's a really important piece for a defense that needs to be able to tackle and finish.
Mm-hmm.
Linval Joseph is one of those like immovable objects where he's not going to be the one flying up, attacking the quarterback and getting all kinds of sack numbers, but he's going to be the one that's going to be the right place, right time for the most part. And you're not going to be able to move him off of his point very often without double teams. And I would love it if folks double team Linval Joseph, because that just means more room for the other guys on our defensive line. I think Linval Joseph is clearly, I don't want to say clearly, but I think is going to be starting off kind of the nose tackle one in this defense.
Yep. I mean, he'll go back to his traditional nose tackle spot.
And Giff Smith, he has kind of an interesting, the defensive line coach, he has an interesting group of guys because he has a lot of different players he can play and kind of deploy them for different reasons. So like Linval Joseph is one of a kind in this defense. And then you'll notice as we go through these, there's a ton of other guys that have different kind of specs, kind of position types, archetypes, if you will, that Brandon Staley and this defensive line coach can use when they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting from Linval Joseph's perspective because I look at the measurables of him, and especially with this move to a 3-4, it's been a long time since the Chargers have had that dominating presence in the middle. Go all the way back to Jamal Williams. You want a more athletic version of Jamal Williams? See Linval Joseph. And it's insane when you say that about a guy who's 6'4" and 323 pounds. But forget all that, dude. If you watched film of him last year, the guy's chasing down people. The guy is going sideline to sideline still to follow the ball and make a play. This is the more athletic version of Jamal Williams. And in a 3-4 defense, which I know even during his time in Minnesota, I believe it was more for his duration, it was more 4-3 at that time. I think that this is going to be a great move for him because of his size. And now you're actually going to get an opportunity to have the likes of Justin Jones and Jerry Tillery, all three of these guys playing on the field at the same time, something that we have not gotten a chance to see from them yet. And I think it's going to benefit all parties.
Now, that's interesting to say that. So I know it technically it's a 3-4 front, but your front would be what? Like Joseph, in your eyes, Tillery.
Yeah, which, I mean, Tillery obviously is going to be the wild card because especially from things that I've read, they're still going to find a way to use him on the edge and mix him up. But yeah, ideally what you're going to see is you're going to see Joseph in the middle, and you probably see Tillery on the right of him, and then Justin Jones on the left.
Got it. And then you'd have Bosa and Nwosu on their ends.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. Now, moving on to Tillery for a sec, who I think, do both of us agree that's probably nose tackle 2 or interior defensive line number 2?
You probably put, what's labeled as the defensive end, that's probably where he's going to get his bread and butter as far as just his downs goes. But it's a very interesting situation that he's in because say what you will about his season last year. And has he lived up to first round expectations thus far in his first 2 years? The short answer is no. Do I think that he's grown since his first year, even though last year wasn't amazing? Yes, I do. As Fernando said last week, you never like to necessarily badmouth the coaching, but I don't even think that he was utilized as properly as he should have been last year either. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Does he play aggressive? Yes. Does it get him in trouble? Also, yes. I think he had 8 penalties last year, and 3 of them were personal fouls for 15 yards. You can't have that. So you have to shore those type of mistakes up. Here's the quote that I found from Brandon Staley that he said about him. I think this was back in May. But Brandon Staley loves what he sees from Tillery. Obviously, from a guy who's his size and moves the way he does, he needs to do a lot better job in the running game. Again, when he was at Notre Dame, that wasn't what he was known for. He was known for his pass rushing abilities. But Staley's plan is to make him more of a complete player. But this is what Staley had to say: "Quote: He's going to give us the best advantage in." Where he's going to give us the biggest advantage is in interior pass rush, but we feel like this guy's got a chance to be a complete player. This guy's got a lot more tough, physical, and rugged in the run game than I was expecting. So I think that the plans that he has to mold for him, and again, that's why I say still think that you're going to see some of these hybrid defensive fronts that Staley will still throw in there from time to time where, hey, it'll surprise you. There's a 6'7" guy that's out on the edge, come in for, a third down play and give Joey Bosa a breather for every now and again. But I think that their plan is, if you're talking about one guy that may actually one of the next two guys that we're going to be talking about that's really going to benefit and probably get the same type of next step that we saw from Leonard Floyd when he was with the Rams with Brandon Staley coaching the defense, look to Tillery. I think Staley's plan for him is to finally take that next step, and this is the year that he's looking to have him finally kind of complete that mold that we were all hoping for.
The one thing that I harp on with Tillery is, last year especially, he came out, burst onto the scene. I think it was week 1 or week 2, where everyone's like, "Oh, here he goes!" And he was kind of one of those players to watch where you think he's going to be one of those, like, take the next step in 2020. The one thing, if you go back and watch, there were so many, I want to say a dozen times, where he was great quarterback pressure, gets the hand, but just can't finish. Mm-hmm. And I think if there's one thing, and this is where I'm so grateful to have Brandon Staley at the helm, even with Renaldo Hill, everyone kind of talking about like the little things and going back to basics. If he is just able to finish where he already was last year and just finish the play, he's going to be remarkable this year. And I think that's where coaching is going to help him a lot. I think he has the potential, I don't want to get crazy, he has the potential to do very well in this type of defense because he has that Swiss Army knife physique as a defensive lineman, where he has that tweener. He could be defensive end, be defensive tackle. He's tall, he's lengthy, but he's also pretty stocky. So I have a lot. I'm really high on what Tillery can bring this year, specifically in this defense. And I don't know which one of those like archetypes is more important or more valuable to Renaldo Hill and company. Like, is it that immovable object nose tackle, or is it that Swiss Army knife type? Or is it both? Like, it might be both. That might be the easy answer. But I look at kind of Aaron Donald, and he's kind of, he's a wild card.
He's in his own stratosphere.
Yeah, you're not going to get him. But if you had to put him in one of those categories, I feel like he's more of the Swiss Army knife type. And that leans me more towards the Tillery type.
Yeah. That's what we would like to see Tillery being. And I think that that's what Staley's alluding to in this quote here. Again, we want to make him more of a complete player. Has Tillery been good against the run? No, he hasn't. Last year, he ended up with, I think it was 14 quarterback hits. Going back to what you were talking about, Dan, getting to the quarterback, that was second behind Joey Bosa. Say what you will about how much the Chargers actually blitzed or pressured quarterbacks last year. That's irrelevant. It still ended up that he was second on the team in the pressure. So it is what it is. But not comparing Jerry Tillery to Aaron Donald, but I get what you're saying. In that mold of what you would like to see him being, if you can make him a better pass rusher, as Staley did with Leonard Floyd, but you can also round out the fundamentals that you need in the run game, you can get to a very productive defensive end that you need for a 3-4 system. And like I said, I think it will benefit him playing alongside Linval Joseph, and then, of course, having Jared Jones on the other side of that. Just imagine this for a second. Just look at from the center of the defensive line, and then go to Bosa's side. Imagine just being someone that's standing there and looking at Linval Joseph, Jerry Tillery, and then Joey Bosa.
God,
I mean, just that side alone is intimidating to see guys that are that big and coming after you. But again, it's all about refinement. It's all about rounding out your game. And this is what we would hope that both Staley and Renaldo Hill are going to focus on. And from this quote here, it looks like that is one of the points of emphasis that Staley's looking for.
If we could just get Tillery to finish where he started last year and to get some of that technique back.
Cut down the penalties. Cut down the bonehead plays.
The little things. Like there's, I think arguably, and I think you've said this before too, Jake, I think arguably interior defensive line is one of the quote unquote like weaknesses or areas of concern for this defense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why is because we don't know, and we've seen it happen before, where it's just open the floodgates, 5-6 yards a pick. Like it, if we can get this part done, like if we can shore up to where we have, let's just call it above average interior defensive line, this defense has the chance to be something special.
Yeah. And again, I mainly say that I'm worried about it because tell me the last time that the Chargers had a dominant run defense, like a good one, where you felt like you could rely on those guys to take away that facet of the game and force the quarterback to beat you. And don't worry, I'll wait. I'll wait.
It's so sad. It's so,
look at this. We talked about this during the schedule release show when we did this, when the schedule was first come out. Just look at this through, remember, the first 6 weeks of the year. Washington, Antonio Gibson. You don't think that Ron Rivera is going to want to run the ball down our throat in that game? Then your second game's against Dallas, okay? Zeke Elliott looking for a redemption year for himself. You already know that the Chiefs are going to do it in week 3. Andy Reid's still going to want to keep some balance with as good as Patrick Mahomes is going to be playing. You play the Raiders, okay, that's a little bit hearsay. Then you get the Browns and you get the Ravens and you get the Patriots. All three
and
of those
teams. And you get the Bengals. I mean, it's like all of them. We're going up against arguably probably the best running backs in football all season.
I mean, there's a lot of running backs that the Chargers
Cam Akers.
Go up against.
It's like we're going up,
you go up against Saquon Barkley at some point in the year. It's going to be rough sledding if this run defense can't get shored up, and it needs to get up quickly. And if the run games of the opposition is able to get started early, hold your breath at the beginning of the season. Hold your breath. Now, let's jump to Justin Jones, because I think it's a good comparison that you made, Dan, when you were talking about Jerry Tillery being more of that versatile Swiss Army knife, a guy, who's good at the pass rush, needs a little bit of work in the run game. Justin Jones is the complete opposite of that. His work against the run is stout, but he registered his first career sack just this past year. And he's heading into his fourth year. Why do you think that is? Well, I mean, I think it's a variety of different things. I think that when he came on with his team, Gus Bradley was still the defensive coordinator. Yeah, I think you knew what you had from Justin Jones. Didn't put up huge stats as far as rushing the passer in college. Has always been a good run defender. But however you may have thought about that, and he's been in and out. He has succumbed to injuries over the last couple of years. Nothing that's been for long stretches of periods of time. Maybe 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I think it's more of just utilization. And I think this is going to be another potential player to watch for to take kind of that Leonard Floyd leap. Okay, like we had, and what Brandon Staley's already talked about, and we've heard this from all the other players, where they're going to put your guys in the best position to win. Now, does that mean that we're going to play a defense to a strength that's going to be of every individual player? I would hope so. So for Justin Jones, if Brandon Staley's looking at this, and obviously I'm sure he has, you look at what Justin Jones' strength is, and it's the run game. Do I think that there's still potential to unlock him as a pass rusher because of the athletic ability that he possesses? Yes, I do. It'd be nice to see that. when I actually read that stat earlier that he got his first career sack this past season, I was like, really? That was it? Okay. But this is another one that's interesting, and especially for Justin Jones, because now this is his final year in the as a contract in the Chargers. So his days in the powder blue and yellow could be numbered. So is this going to be the year that he is able to step up? And whether it's for the Chargers or another team, make a case to be paid after this season.
And isn't it? It's really interesting too. You know, one of the things Fernando talked about on the last episode, we said like one of the differences with this team this year with the coaching staff is like the energy that the players have towards the coaching and kind of where they're heading. And they talk about like, you know, Joey Bosa is so excited. To get him excited, like that says something. I don't know about you, but like when I hear contract year, like especially for defensive players, I can't think of a better coach to bring into your team to help you on a contract year than the coaching staff that has come in.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm Justin Jones and I'm trying to get paid, like who else would you rather, what other coach would you want to get you ready for that? Mm-hmm. So like him, we'll talk about Uchenna Nwosu in another episode. There's a lot of guys on defense that are like pumped to have this as kind of the year of Brandon Staley. There's a reason why everyone's excited. Justin Jones is going to have an impact on this team. Now, will I be surprised if he has a larger impact than the other two we mentioned before? Yeah. But I think a lot of his impact comes without looking at the statistics. Like he's kind of just the one that kind of, he's always lined up under center. Like he's kind of plugging in gaps for other people to make plays. And so in my eyes, if you're hearing, and I wouldn't be surprised this year and beyond if we have him for that long, you hear Justin Jones's name more because I think Brandon Staley's types of defenses, you see more contributions from many more players than just the superstars. Like you see people out of nowhere. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe John Johnson and all these other players. Leonard Floyd, I mean, had a miraculous year. And that wasn't just because they were a great player. I mean, sure, it helped, but Brandon Staley brings out the best in a lot of players to where it's not a surprise when you see, 5, 6, 7 guys from the defensive line all having at least, 4 or 5 sacks.
Yeah. I like what you said as far as the stats factor or even lack thereof with Justin Jones. That's not the most important thing when it comes to his game. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago when he only played 12 games that year, I remember anybody that you talked to or anybody that you heard when it came to the Chargers' struggles on defense that year, a lot of them went to the fact that Justin Jones wasn't playing. And because everybody knew how vital he was as being a run defender for that team. And when he wasn't playing, the run defense was suffering. Was it solely his fault? Absolutely not. But you need a key cog like that to be a rotational piece to try to shore up a leaky run defense. And they understand that, and that's why that's what he's known for. He's not known for getting the quarterback hits. And obviously, as I just said a few minutes ago, he's not known for getting the sacks. He's going to do the dirty work. He's going to do the dirty work that not a lot of people are going to pay attention to. But when he's not on the field, you're going to recognize it more than anything.
Now, the next person we're going to talk about, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a sec. Not where we start the season, but let's go week 18. Who do you see as the next position or the next in line? So I guess it'd be in the depth chart, 4? Of all the players we're talking about, who is going to be that by the end of the season?
Christian Covington. Yeah, Christian Covington. So, as we all know, Damian Square was let go this year. He went elsewhere. Christian Covington was brought in as the Damian Square replacement. If you want to talk about how, especially last year, Linval Joseph is just built, is just what do they call him? There was a name for him last year, Dan. I can't remember what it was.
It was like a refrigerator, all kinds of stuff.
Like a refrigerator or like a variation of a tank that they put like a cool
Pepsi
little
machine.
Name. Yeah, something like that. If Linval Joseph is that, then Christian Covington is like his little cousin.
It's a big
way that he's built. He is stacked. And this is more of the reason why this is the Damon Square replacement. Again, going back to the aspects of the running game, a rotational piece. His best, he's had previous stints with the Texans, with the Dallas Cowboys, with the Denver Broncos, and short stint with the Bengals. Those last three teams, those all came in the last 2 years. But where he had his most success when he was in Houston was in a 3-4 defensive front. Hey, there you go. That's nice to see. And for a guy that plays with a lot of underrated power and strength, you see some of the clips that you can find on Twitter when he's making plays out there, and he's winning with his power. So it's nice to have a guy like that where it doesn't always have to be finesse technique and getting around one guy, just by using a move. It's nice to see someone that just got that power to say, you're in front of me and I'm going to get past you by just knocking you on your ass.
I love Christian Covington because one of the things that I've noticed, it seems as though this coaching staff and Tom Telesco have been very specific with going after like different archetypes. So you don't have a lot of guys who all do the same thing. Like when you look at Christian Covington, he has weirdly long arms, like to his advantage. His arms are crazy long, and you watch it, you're like, I'm not like once you're in front of him, like you're kind of stuck. He thick. You're not really moving him away. I think his arms are his competitive advantage, in my opinion. Like you said, big boy. I mean, he's 300 pounds. Mm-hmm. He's certainly not as tall as some of the other linemen we have, but I think that is used to his advantage because I think that kind of catches people off guard when he's just stacking bricks in front of them. Yeah. I'm interested to hear from your perspective though. So like you look at a Christian Covington and you go down the list of some of the other guys that are on this depth chart, and we'll get into, but you see him above a Fohoko and a Broughton by the end of the season?
Yeah, I do. And I say that for, a few obvious reasons, obviously just experience. For as many years as he's been in the league, he obviously has that advantage over the rest of the guys. But I think he was brought in for a reason. And I think that this was a very low-key free agent move that was after, it was after the draft. It was the early part of May that this was done. And this may be one of the more underrated moves that not a lot of people are paying attention to. And especially for a position group like this, that you have needed depth, not just now, but you've needed depth along this line for a little while. Yeah. Even with Linval Joseph coming in for the 2020 season, there were still some question marks to be had as far as who was behind him and who was going to step up. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. And unfortunately, injuries started to take their toll on this defensive unit as well. So you really need a collection of guys to step up if you're going to see this particular position group take the next leap. Because, it's nice to have your starters and Joseph and Jones and Tillery and thinking about those three guys standing right in the middle of your defensive line. But there's got to be some other ones. There has to be some other ones, even if it's just one. Give me one. And if gun to my head right now, short list, if I'm looking at the talent on this team, I'll say the odds go to Covington in this circumstance.
Well, honestly, when I watch his tape and I look at his stat lines versus his tape, it screams to me that it's almost like an underutilization issue than it is like a talent issue. Like he seems like he has the traits to do much more than his stat lines showcase. And so I'm curious, of all the defensive linemen, I feel like he has the one that could have the largest variance of, wow, I was not expecting that. That kind of goes to your point of like, that might be one of the more underrated, undervalued, like, wow, didn't realize how much of an impact he would bring. So moving on to the next one. Before we go any further, this episode also got to pay the dues. Episode also brought to you by Garrison Brothers. Amazing distillery out of Texas. They have amazing brown stuff. I think there's what's the honey brown one stuff called? Yep. What's the honey one? Honeydew. Honeydew?
Yes.
You and I both have to try these at some point. We've got like a case of them. We got to figure out how we're going to get through all of them. Check them out, Garrison
It's going to take
Brothers.
some time, but trust me, I'll enjoy every minute of it.
Hey, well, hopefully the season goes well, because if it doesn't, it might take a lot less time than we thought.
Yeah. If the season doesn't go well, if those first 4 games are, I may be able to blow past those in a month if the beginning of the season goes bad.
Yep. So if you could check them out, we have a link in our description where you can go directly to them. You can also find them at like Bevmo, Total Wine and Spirits. Most grocery stores have them. They're actually really, really good. I'm surprised that they are as inexpensive relatively as some of their counterparts who go for far, 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 far more than that. Garrison Brothers, check them out. Whiskey, bourbon, small batch, you name it. Highly recommend. So Covington is your guy, number 4. Are you going Fohoko as number 5?
You know, it's interesting because I think that this, when you really look at the guys from this point of the list on, we'll start with Fohoko, but this is still the position that I say, let's just say, for example, if the Chargers only end up keeping 5 interior alignment, which is realistic, I'd say if you ask me today who wins on that, yes, I'll say that that's Fohoko. But if you ask me 2 months from now, that answer could change. Because I think that while he may have a lock on that position right now, I still think that that's the most fluid position that could fluctuate by the time week 1 rolls around. I know Fohoko is a favorite of Fernando. He spoke on that last week. Breiden Fohoko was an undrafted free agent last year. Obviously, became a fan favorite from his dance on Hard Knocks, which was fantastic.
Yes.
Very glad that he ended up making the team. It was a great story that they looked into him with him and his family. And just a great follow on Twitter. Dan, I'm not sure if you caught this. This was actually a tweet, I think it was earlier today, maybe just a short 5 hours ago. But Breiden Fohoko tweeted this, and he said, where is it? Some of the best advice that I've ever gotten is buy you when you order a Big Mac, tell them that you want quarter pounder patties on the Big Mac. It's like a life hack. Like for the people like myself who like to get my double cheeseburger and fries, then I take the fries and I put them on the burger and I put, the hot mustard or the honey mustard on it, and then I eat it. This to me is like another life hack that Breiden Fohoko just found out. Ask for quarter pounder patties on the Big Mac. You can now guarantee I'm going to do that.
I'm going to do that. But there is one thing that Fohoko also put out on Twitter today that I am passionately against. And that was, not happy with it. He went out and said this blasphemy. You ready for this?
Sure.
He said, "You normal, or you put pineapple on your pizza?"
I saw this. And you are in who do you stand with?
Oh, I stand firmly with the pineapple on the pizza, people.
Mm.
You cannot tell me pineapple does not taste delicious on pizza. And I can go into all different cuisines that pineapple can go on. But Breiden, you are wrong. Pineapple is incredible on pizza. I'm going to leave it there. So I will take his advice on the quarter pounder Big Mac fiasco. But the pineapple Fohoko,
Pineapple Fohoko, I like it. But yes, to me, this is where, again, Fohoko undrafted free agent out of LSU when he came out of college, and good production that he put up in college. You didn't really get a chance to see him play a lot last year. At one point of the year, I think at the early part of the year, I think he was even waived for a short period of time before he was ultimately signed back onto the team. But he really didn't get a chance to do too much. Do I think that he's going to make this giant leap in his position and with the talent in front of him? No, I don't see that happening. Do I think that his skill set, especially in this type of a scheme with these type of head coaches is going to benefit him for the long run and give him a leg up, 100% I do.
Fohoko, I don't think there's a concern for me that he makes a team. I think he's in. I really like his potential in terms of, he just seems very quick for a defensive line. He has a really good first step. I think he shoots the gap better than the majority of our defensive line depth. A little raw, but I think that he has potential, and I think that's what coaching staff is going to see out of him. I like Breiden Fohoko. I think he's a great depth piece, to your point. I think you're right, though. At this point, let's just be frank. Do you think that there are going to be more than... Will there be another defensive line on the interior on this team other than the ones we've already discussed?
Well, it's one of two things. Either you keep 5, and the first 5 that we just talked about is it.
So Covington, Jones, Joseph, Fohoko, and Tillery.
Mm-hmm. Or like I said, I still believe that while I give Fohoko the edge up right now, he still is in that. To me, that's the hot seat spot. Mm-hmm. Because there's about 5 other guys that I could see that could possibly make a surprise push for his role. Or you keep 6 defensive linemen on the interior, which I doubt happens, because then all you're doing is weakening your other possible positions as far as being able to keep talent there on the defense. So I think that they would stay with 5. Now, let's just say we have that surprise thing happen. You go through the list a little bit here with the remaining players that we have. We're now talking about Cortez Broughton, who is now going into his 3rd year being with this team, former 7th round pick. TJ Smith, Willie Yarby, who was just recently signed, formerly played out of Wake Forest, and where was he? I think he was in the. Oh, it was the Arena League. So apologies for my forgetfulness for that moment in time.
You are forgiven. You are forgiven, Jake.
You have TJ Smith, who not a lot of people know about on this team. I think, again, that's just a rotational depth piece and a camp body at this point in time. And then you have the 2 undrafted free agents that were taken this year, and Jared Goldwire and Forrest Merrell. And you're talking about 2 guys, especially physically, that are just on opposite ends of the spectrum. Jared Goldwire, big body defensive tackle, 6'6", 305, out of Louisville. The stats that he put up, I think, could have been better. I think for as big as he is, I don't think that the stats match up what you would expect a guy like that to play on. But it's an intriguing option if you're talking about the possibilities of getting the 5th spot on this interior defensive line. Now, Forrest Merrell, I love what I see from Forrest Merrell, especially when watching him on film. If Forrest Merrell was born with 3 inches of more height and about 5 inches more of arm length, you'd probably be talking about Forrest Merrell being taken anywhere from rounds 4 to 6 and not go undrafted. I love the quote that Lance Zierlein calls him. He calls him a squatty little door jam, is what Lance Zierlein called him, which is just fantastic. And it's true, too. When you go back and you watch his film, for his career, he finished with 117 tackles, 17.5 tackles for a loss, and 8 sacks. He's just a bowling ball of a human being. And again, where he stands right now is 6 foot. 6 foot. 322 pounds. He's a big boy.
Which is small. It's short for a defensive line, but it's also pretty stocky.
The odds are against you succeeding when you have that lack of depth, but it reminds me a lot of Poona Ford, who currently plays for the Seattle Seahawks, who I loved coming out of the draft that year. And Poona Ford is only 5'11", people. It is plausible. It can happen. So if I was to say one guy that I would love to see give Fohoko a run for his money, even if he ends up still getting the job, Out of these remaining 5 guys, again, I always gravitate towards the bigger type of a guys, especially in a 3-4 type of scheme. But if it's for me, God, I love Forrest Merrell. I'm pulling for Forrest Merrell to show me something in camp this year. I want to see the bowling ball wreck somebody.
I don't know if I want him or Jared Goldwire. Those are probably the two that
which makes sense. And normally I would be right there with you, Dan, because that size is just, you can't teach that. You can't teach that size. That's just
and other than Tillery,
God-given. Exactly.
I think he's the only other player on this roster who is that big.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a good depth piece. I think it's like an insurance policy potentially. So I'm kind of leaning towards Goldwire, but again, at this point, like we're talking the last position if it's there. Now, could they do something interesting and they put Tillery as a defensive end technically? Like maybe, but I doubt it. This is going to be interesting in the sense that I think the defensive line interior-wise is probably going to be one of the most important components of this defense in terms of what keeps it from getting to its potential. We've seen it so many times as we're kind of wrapping up this show. We've seen it so many times where the Chargers have the offense on the ropes. It's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5. It doesn't really even matter. And Chargers are just getting gashed on the inside. First down after first down after first down. Like, we just can't stop that. And sometimes we get lucky and the other team decides not to throw it. Cool. Or not to run it and just throw it and then incomplete pass or whatever. But if we can hold our own on the inside on this defensive line and let a Brandon Staley-led secondary and linebacking core kind of get after it, like that is what gets me excited. Like if we can get the same Linval Joseph, if we can get a more polished Jerry Tillery, but just those two alone, if those two guys can stay as advertised, like that has the potential to be special. And you add in a Justin Jones, who he will be great as your defensive lineman for stopping the run. Like, you see how there are different deployments. All these players provides like specific traits. And as we go into the other position battles, you'll notice kind of the same trend where there are guys that have been brought in for like a specific task. You don't have much overlap. So I think that's what gets me excited about this interior defensive line, Jake, is that there isn't much overlap. And so when you look at like the position battles, it's less about who does the same thing better, but it's more about what traits do you want more on your defensive line. Mm-hmm. So maybe to kind of close it out for you, like what do you foresee as like the gauge for success for the interior defensive line? So like, I guess the question would be, fast forward week 18, Chargers defense did blank because the defensive line held up.
See, now it's going to be interesting because now you're talking about 2 defensive schemes if we're just comparing 2020 to what we assume that we're going to see in 2021. One, do I think that there's going to be players that are playing more of a natural position of what they should have been playing all along? Yes. Do I think they're going to be better utilized in this scheme? 100%. Now, if you want to just look at barometer-wise, does the running game solely rely on just this one position group? No, it doesn't. But it's definitely the first line of defense when it comes to the run game. And for context purposes, the Chargers last year was giving up 119 yards rushing per game. 119, which amazingly, I know that sounds bad, but that was only 17th worst in the league. 17th.
Average.
Hey, you weren't Houston, which was giving up a hell of a lot more than that. So I guess you could say, grass is greener on that side, whichever way you want to look at it. At least you're not Houston's defense and what you gave up last year. That's one way of looking at it. But yeah, if you're to give me the barometer, I would like to see this run defense be in the top 10. I think that's a fair ask of what we're seeing here. Jerry Tillery, I want to see that type of progression for him, being more consistent, being more of that complete player. With Justin Jones, I'd like to see him get some of these opportunities to get after the quarterback, man. It's just, I know that the dude is good at what he does in the run game, and that's just fine. Keep doing you. But give this man a shot. Give him a release. Give him something. Give him a chance to run a 10-yard sprint and hit a quarterback in the backfield. Give me some.
Please.
It's nothing huge, but I think just collectively as a unit, you need to shore the run game up. And it's going to take more than the three starters that we have on this team in Tillery, Joseph, and Jones. It's going to. Collectively, you're going to have the fourth and the fifth guy step up. Damon Square, for as long as he was with this team, he was a very nice rotational piece.
Yeah. I was surprised they let him go, actually.
Yeah. Do I think that we can get that same type of production with Covington? Yeah, I do. I think that's very possible. So give me that, improve in the run game, which again, we're not talking that much improvement that needs to be done. Just be better than you were last year. I guess that's the best way that I could say it. And the measurement is literally, if we're talking about how bad the run game was, like, hey, you finished at a D plus, hey, give me a B minus. It's not really not that big of a jump. I'm not asking for A plus, because there's other aspects of this defense that's going to win. And there's other players in this defense that's going to help out in the running game. But if we're just talking this, give me a B minus average. And I think that will collectively make this defense better.
I think the player to watch for on this entire defensive line, and I think the one that will provide the biggest opportunity for this defensive line to be special, is Jerry Tillery. If he can, because he's talent-wise, he's there. Go back and watch the tape last year. He was right where he was supposed to be, and he just didn't finish. It was all mental. He didn't have the right technique, boneheaded penalties, offside. You saw a lot of roughing the passers and some weird unsportsmanlike conduct. If he just finishes the right technique, take away the boneheaded plays, give him the exact same opportunities as last year, I think you would double his sacks. He's that good. And so when you look at kind of the Leonard Floyd role, Jerry Tillery kind of has that. I know everybody talked about kind of Kyle Fackrell. Everybody talked about Shannon Nwosu. Everybody coming in. I really think that a Chris Rumpf / Jerry Tillery, they're very similar in body types. Those are the two that I think are going to be the most like a Leonard Floyd.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're talking about two guys that are just different on what they do best.
Mm-hmm.
Tillery in the pass rush, Jones in the run game. Can both of these guys become more complete players? And like you said, Dan, I think in this coaching staff and under them, they definitely have that potential to do so.
They want to get paid, and this is the year to do it, especially for Justin Jones. So that's going to do it, I believe, for the defensive line breakdown for position battles.
Yeah, I'm sick of talking to you. I'm done.
Okay, you're done? Cool. Me too. I was taking a look at your ugly mug. Sorry, I'm talking to myself because my ugly mug is much, much worse than yours. And I'm glad you're staying hydrated, Jake. That's important.
Well, I was staying hydrated with, with Brewery X plenty this week.
There we go.
Time to take a break.
Did you go with the slap and tickle, or did you go with one of the seltzers? What were we going with?
I went with the seltzer, actually. I think I knocked back 3 of the jungle juices yesterday, and that was good. I ran out of the painkillers. I finished those. I think I still have some X on the beaches that are still left in there, but the jungle juice is what I still have the majority of that's in there. Okay,
that jungle juice stuff is no joke. Was it 10%?
10%, dude. You don't need much.
No.
It'll get to you.
Jeez. You had 3 of them. Good for you, sir. Mm-hmm. All right, you're happy. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Chargers Unleashed. For those who are coming in for the first time, thank you. You can find us on Twitter at LAC_Unleashed. Myself, Chargers Homer, my lovely co-host, Jake T. Hefner on Twitter for Jake. Find us on YouTube. You're lovely. I'm giving it to you. You deserve it.
Continue.
You can find us. You can find us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Also, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. If you feel we deserve a review, feel free to give us one on Apple Podcasts. You name it. Jake, this is fun. We have 3-4 weeks until we get to do Chargers mini camps. We get to actually go to some of those potentially.
29 days and counting, baby. And we actually get to go to the camps this year.
I know. And officially 76 days until week 1 against the Washington football team. It's going to fly by. I know sometimes I feel like it's going slow, but this is going to fly by. And I cannot wait. Jake, Thank you for being you. I appreciate all that you bring to this. And I appreciate all of the incredible hats that you wear every time we come onto the show.
It's the same hat.
Always keeps me guessing. I love it.
It's just hat. I just wear it a different direction, dude. It's backwards.
That's why it looks different.
Yeah, it's the same hat.
All right. For Jake Hefner, Dan Wolkes on here, thank you so much for watching and listening. And we will talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.
The Los Angeles Chargers select Rashawn Slater,
Asante Samuel Jr.
Stop! Oh, I'm stopping y'all boys. I can't catch it.
Intercepted. Picked up by Michael Davis.
Explosiveness from Eckler.
There's Murphy. Boy, he blew that up, didn't he?
It is picked off. Nasir Adderley. 50-50 ball is 100%. Mike Williams.
Ojeda, you